right, all right, all right. All right, all right, all right. Okay, I think we've let that play on long enough. Very good little beat right there. If anybody knows their hip hop, I encourage you to comment on this here live and let me know who made that beat right there. If you know who made that beat, you might just win the comments of the day. Good even fall to one and all. And good even fall to that one little listener that keeps popping in and out. Yeah, this is the warp speed. And I do hope you are doing well of health and sane of mind. And if you aren't well of health and sane of mind, well, join the club. This is the warp speed. And in this show, Life with Warp Speed, I confess that if anything, I don't have any answers for you on any of the subjects that we will be discussing here today at all. Most of all, if anything, I'm just a curious individual. An individual that is just here traveling through these interstellar spaces. A psychonaut, a cosmonaut. Just curious, observing, watching the little men and women in my life go about living their life, their very interesting lives, full of opinions and ponderance. And I want to know more about those things because I myself, I'm a very relaxed individual. Don't really have too much time to formulate thoughts or ponder the complex things of the world. So I always invite you all, our listeners, the commenters, the trolls, the astute, the opinionated, to come in here and to just give me a piece of your mind. So with that being said, here we go. Today we will be discussing the issue of karma. Karma. Yeah. So what exactly is karma, right? Well, depends on who you ask. But some people would say that karma is like something akin to the golden rule, right? You do good and you get good in return. It's very much like you get out what you put in, right? Like for example, if you water your flowers, your roses, you provide them their nutrients, those things will bloom, they will look beautiful, there will be images that will depict the work that you've put in and the rewards that they put out for your hard work. That's the way that I think of karma, right? You get out what you put in. And a lot of people, we do tend to live by that golden rule, right? If you want others to treat you well, treat them well. Seems quite simple, right? But we all know that it's harder to actually be a good person than that we're really making it seem to be, right? For the most part, I believe we are all failed and imperfect men and women here. And if you aren't a failed and imperfect individual, well, I encourage you to cast this first stone right at me, right there in the eyeball. I want you to hit me with it. But I believe we are honest enough, imperfect, but honest enough to know that we aren't perfect, but that we could strive to be, right? So there's things like karma that try to anchor us into being better versions of ourselves instead of being those more innate, barbaric, animalistic, and primal beings that we know we have inside of us and capable of being. Saludos to you, El Pachuco. And saludos to you too, Drew. 123. Why no live? Yeah, we are live. Just hopped on about 15 or so minutes later than the scheduled time that I posted on the live. But I really do appreciate your patience. And you know what they say about patience? Patience is a virtue. And if you are virtuous, you might just develop good enough karma to live a good and rewarding life. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, I am an individual that does not profess to have answers for you. If anything, I have questions. So, this show, Life with Warp Speed, is a show for the curious minded, but it is also a show for the opinionated, the people better than myself, those that don't have to question who they are or what they want out of life. Because that's what I do. I question everything. It's just always been in my nature to just question and research and investigate and to give every side a chance to provide me their opinions, their idea formations, because I just want to understand everybody. I want to expand my range of knowledge and of data processing. So I have a few things that I'd like to run by you, a couple of reports that I've run into, and of course we do talk a lot about the sport of boxing, but I hope that we can apply these conversations into a bigger scale in our own personal lives and maybe apply what we talk about here into our own everyday lives, the quotidian, right? Karma. It's right there on the screen, right? Karma in a sport of violence. I mean, that sounds quite contradictory, right? I mean, karma. If karma is the good that you get from the good that you put out, how can we say something like violence, which innately isn't good? Why should we expect that something violent like the sport of boxing should even be pegged to such rules and dogma as karma? I ask you. But the question of karma has come about. And a couple of days ago, one of our former 140-pound fighters, who his last fight fought one of our undisputed 135-pound fighters, but now fighting at 140, Mr. Devin the Dream Haney. Regis Prograis lost to that man, and he was interviewed, and he said that what happened to Devin Haney was karma for the way that he was handled in the negotiations at the table with Devin Haney. Now recall, of course, in case you've not been following the sport as attentively and as passionately as I know El Pachuco, Dream, myself, and the homie Ricky have. Last weekend, on Saturday, April the 20th, 2024, the year of our Lord, the most important fight for amateurs to witness, the most important fight in the sport of boxing in general took place, and it taught us many lessons. It taught us that you can be the hardest working individual. You can keep your nose clean. You can be a family man. You can be humble. You can do all of those things. And then a black sheep comes about that does neither any one of those things. He would be the opposite, the bombastic, the arrogant, the lax. He could come over here and just mollywop you, throw the fisticuffs, chunkums, drop him on you, and you can't do anything about it. We witnessed a former pound for pound fighter, undisputed, who in fact, he got the win. He eked it by, really, against my favorite fighter. Nonetheless, he gains my respect. Young Devin Haney allowed a weight bullying King Ryan Garcia, to go up there and blow the weight, and as a compromise, to allow the fight to go on. And also because he really believed in himself, that he could still beat all odds because he was a better technical fighter, Devin Haney consented to a weight bullying Ryan Garcia to fight him at a weight that behooved Ryan. And we know that it's behooved Ryan, because Ryan has fought at catchweights, if not mistaken, at 3 different times in the past 3 or 4 fights. Ryan Garcia looked very healthy and strong on the weigh-in. And of course, as we know, some of the more professional fighters, they look very sullen, sunken-eyed, and emaciated when at the weigh-in. Devin the Dream Haney looked once again a very skinny skeleton shell of himself, like he has done before. If not mistaken, he looked very dry and parched when he weighed in against my favorite fighter, Vasily Lomachenko. But the man who trained so hard to make weight, the guy who took his job serious, the guy who was here to entertain, the guy who had done it all to get there, Devin Haney, he wasn't gonna walk away from the negotiating table, spoil an event that was chock full of people at the venue, and that he was hoping would sell well as a pay-per-view, so that the financial rewards would compensate for the risk that he was taking. And he assumed those risks, and he sold his booty. And Ryan Garcia went in there and started ragdolling him for a couple of rounds at least. I'm not trying to make it seem like if Devin Haney was not competitive. And in fact, he was quite competitive. Ryan Garcia threw so many punches, he tired out. Devin Haney started to capitalize. In fact, Devin Haney started to walk down Ryan Garcia. He started gaining round after round after round by just jabbing and throwing a 2, jabbing and throwing a 2. And in fact, he actually hit Ryan Garcia with a very good 2. If I'm not mistaken, Ryan Garcia ended up going all the way to the ropes. He took one of the cleanest shots in the whole fight, Devin Haney did. When the third man in the ring, he tried to separate him, and Ryan Garcia threw a 2. Smack dab in the face of Devin Haney. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the one that broke his jaw. What am I trying to get at here? I'm trying to get at the fact that the most important fight in the sport of boxing took place last Saturday. And if you missed it, shame on you. Do better. I work with a lot of amateur fighters. My son is an amateur fighter. He's recently turned 18. My 10-year-old, he's playing 2 sports right now, so I haven't put him in boxing yet, but I'm giving him until 12 before I throw him in there. But I am very well involved, very much so, in the amateur circuit where I reside in Central California, Salinas, to be exact, good old US of A. And I talk to these kids, these young men and women, these nascent fighters, and I cheer them on, and I help promote their fights. But these kind of fights that took place last Saturday, those are the ones that these fighters have to watch in order to understand how to best maneuver in the sport of boxing. because those were bifurcating roads that Devin Haney and the Dream took, right? We had a fighter that is exploited the opportunities that he was born with. This is Ryan Garcia. He was born with the gifts of speed and power, right? And he was also, let's admit, he was born with the gift of being a brown man, an American of Mexican descent. Not too sure if he identifies as a Mexican American. Never heard him identify as a Chicano, but nonetheless, he has that ardent and passionate, very supportive fan base in his favor. And that's a blessing. If one thing we do say, us, which we do call ourselves La Raza, we do support each other. We are proud people. Ain't nothing wrong with that. But I've asked myself a lot of times, do men like Ryan Garcia and Andy Ruiz Jr. and all of these fighters, do they get a pass solely because they are, quote unquote, La Raza? Right? Because the Raza that I know of, they're very hardworking. The Raza that I know of, they are very respectful and humble. That's one thing that I know about La Raza. They are full of humility and hard work. And in Ryan Garcia, I tend to see the opposite, right? I tend to see a fighter that is proud of taking shortcuts and not necessarily listening to his trainer, doing his own thing, hopping from trainer to trainer whenever it doesn't suit him, to take the orders of somebody that is barking too much in his way. Similar to Andy Ruiz. He reached the highest levels of the world of boxing. In fact, he became the very first Mexican-American Chicano or Mexican heavyweight champion ever. And in fact, it'll be hard to replicate an accomplishment like that. But I always ask myself, do these men take us for granted? Right? And it's okay, I guess, right? I mean, Ryan Garcia is completely opposite to my father, my uncles, my brothers, the people that I know of. Very opposite. But whatever, right? We want our people to win. It's completely natural. I understand it. I, in fact, think the brown man is the perfect individual to be a leader, because we understand both sides of the color divide, right? In my case, at least, I can tell you for sure that I do sympathize with the fellow black man. Right, my hero has been Martin Luther King Jr. I listen to soul music, funk, gangster oldies is what they call them. I call it soul. But I also understand power and dominance, and what in the case of the Mexican, Aztec, the Mexica, they were conquered and dominated by a white man, the Spaniards. And we never held any resentment towards them. In fact, you wouldn't have about 80% of Mexican or Mexican Americans without a little of both cultures, right? The natives and the white, the former conquerors to those that were conquered. That is the story of the Mexican. It's okay. I hold no resentment. But Devin Haney, in my eyes, is a person that I could respect, because he is hardworking, because he is, for the most part, humble. I know a lot of people don't like him because of his father. Yeah, he's very caustic and toxic. But nonetheless, I do see a lot in Devin Haney that I like as an individual, as a man, that I don't necessarily like and Ryan Garcia. But at the end of the day, we are here to watch boxing and to watch violence, right? So it doesn't matter to us at the end of the day, as long as they provide that innate desire of us to see bloodshed. And we saw that. Now, for the amateurs out there that are listening, I know sometimes you guys catch up on these lives. You can understand who you are, understand your fan base, pander to them, or in fact ignore them. In the case of Ryan, I don't think he's ever necessarily pandered to the Mexican Americans. We just naturally gravitate towards them. And you can exploit that. Make yourself an individual outside of the sport of boxing. Get the fame and recognition there so that when you come into the ring, you already have people clamoring to see you. Sell them for the highest buck. They will bite hook, line, and sinker. Demand some of the toughest fights, even if it means a shortcut. Go to the Tank Davises. Go to the Devin Haneys. Take those fights and people will recognize your valor. Win or lose, right? That's one formula. Or you can do the Devin Haney formula, which is try to be the right and best person you can be. Nobody recognizes it. They deny you. Nobody cares about you. They cheer on for your downfall. And even though you accomplish the most and take on some of the toughest fights, win or lose, you'll still get people to respect you just because you don't have the charisma or the fan base, right? Because it's admitted. Devin Haney is a black man, and it seems that his own people don't like him. It's a shame. That's the lesson. Decide for yourself what you want to do. Mass appeal, take the shortcuts, make the big money, or take the hard route. But in the case of Devin Haney, he took the hard route, and Regis Prograis saying that he lost and suffered a consequence of being a weight bully or a manipulator of contracts, and it came back to haunt him. Maybe we can talk about these things. Let's see. Regis Prograis. This is what he had to say, right? In a report in Boxing News 24, written by Mr. James the Grad. It's titled, Regis Prograis details weight manipulation and Devin Haney fight. Sees Ryan Garcia win as karma. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we know this, right? This is not new. I know this line of conversation and inquisition has been making the rounds in some of the more bigger channels, right? Because people are trying to find a way to discredit Devin Haney. Because at the end of the day, guess what? If what Regis Prograis saying is true, then there is such a thing as karma, right? Now, Ryan Garcia was weight manipulated by Tank Davis, and Tank Davis stopped that man. Devin Haney, weight manipulated Regis Prograis, and what happened? Devin Haney, even though he hasn't knocked down anybody in years, he knocked down a heavier guy. Okay. Devin Haney then went on and allowed himself to be weight manipulated by Ryan Garcia. And then he got mollywopped. The Mexican G, Devin Haney's a cool person, just can't stand his dad. Yep, that is true, the Mexican G. I recall that you said that, and it's understandable. You're not the only one that said that. A lot of people feel that way. The only thing that I hold against Devin Haney's father, Bill, is the fact that he was trying to gatekeep for the brown man, trying to divide them. And in fact, he succeeded when he questioned whether or not Ryan Garcia was La Raza. And I remember that video where all of these brown men were saying, no, he's not one of us. He's not one of us. The brown man turning on the brown man just because a black man questioned him. And the only one that stood out there and said, what are you talking about? Of course, he's La Raza. Was a female brown woman. I respect women. I remember I said that. But yeah, otherwise, I think Bill is just being the biggest cheerleader of his son, which is understandable, right? I'm the biggest cheerleader of my son. But, you know, I understand he is a very toxic individual. The Mexican Chi goes on and says, I hope Haney can recover from this loss. He's a class act. I meant to say hope. Yeah, I understood. Mexican Chi. You know, it's being said, and I think Mr. Bill Haney, the person that you can't stand, he said that Devin Haney is likely going to be taking the rest of the year off. So imagine how many months that is. It's 8 months of inactivity, right? I mean, we're in March, so that means that's the 4th month. That's still almost a complete 8 months to wrap up the rest of this year. And then who knows when he's going to be returning next year, right? Now, it's coincidence, right, that the person that he's set next to defend that WBC strap at 140 is one of the most complicated fighters there is out there to fight. A man who embarrassed both Mike Garcia and retired him, and also went on and embarrassed Teofimo Lopez. This would be, of course, Spain's Sandor Martin. Is Sandor Martin going to be waiting 8 months, even though he's already fought like 2 months ago? Is he going to wait almost a year before he can get a shot at Devin Haney's belt? Somehow I doubt it. So they're probably going to try to set Sandor Martin up with somebody to keep busy. Unless, of course, he decides to wait his turn like Emantis Stanionis and just waste a year or two waiting for his shot, right? I don't know. But yeah, there you go. They should vacate the belt. Yes, I agree, right? I think they could plead for the WBC to give him an extension of their mandatory defense guidelines by saying that they've taken some harm. But you know our position, the Mexican team. Circulate the belts. That's what we need. The belts to circulate. If you have taken so much harm that you cannot defend the belt, guess what? Make him a champion in recess. And then have Sandor Martin fight someone else for the top shot, make that fighter the champion, and then the first one that gets dibs at it is Devin Haney, right? That's the way I see it. But the Mexican, and to anybody else that's out there, I just wanted to read this real report to you, real quick report right here, about how Regis Prograis alleges that Haney imposed rehydration restrictions. And he says, Regis has stated that Haney might have used IVs to rehydrate to 166 pounds after trying to weigh in to come in really huge for their fight. Regis sees Haney's loss to Ryan Garcia last Saturday night as karma justice. Prograis says he doesn't have proof of Haney using an IV, but he suspects that was the case. And this is what he says, quote, he said he's going up to 147. I respect him because he's shifting boxing right now. Ryan Garcia is shifting boxing, he says about the Mexican-American fighter. And he states, Ryan, is not fighting for belts and he's making a lot of money. So why even care about the belts because you're making so much money? He didn't even care. I'm going to have my weight. You're not going to have that advantage over me. because that weight really makes a difference. Regis continues, and basically interpreting what Ryan Garcia meant by coming in at 143 pounds and telling Devin Haney what he wanted to do. Right? They say weight divisions exist for a reason. So with him, Tank effed over Brian because he made him stay at a certain weight with the 10-pound rehydration limit along with the 136-pound catch weight. So Tank did that to him, and so he did that to Devin, right? So what he's insinuating is that Brian Garcia learned that weight is absolutely crucial in the outcome of a fight. Now let me ask you guys something. Do you guys agree that weight is absolutely crucial to the outcome of a fight? I'll give you guys a few seconds to provide me with your opinion right there, right? I really want to know, do you guys think weight matters, right? Let's see, the Mexican G says, people making excuses about the 3 pounds is annoying. People were just saying that Haney was going to have more power at 140. Yeah, that is true. That is true. But what do you think, the Mexican G? Is weight a crucial factor in a possible outcome of a fight? Okay. Like, for example, when Canelo Alvarez brought up a 147-pound Amir Khan, did that have an outcome? The fact that Canelo was so much bigger than Khan. Did it have an outcome when Triple G brought up Kell Brook to 160? Would it have an outcome in a possible fight between Gervonta Tank Davis and Naoya Inoue? Did Dimitri Bivol beat Canelo simply because of the weight and the size that can somehow promote, right? Because weight on a bigger framed individual can be carried much better, giving some advantages. Is that the reason why Canelo couldn't overcome a fighter that really has never fought in a pound for pound fighter, a former champion? It really hasn't fought any good names out there. This would be, of course, Dimitri Bivol. Why did Dimitri Bivol beat Canelo? Why do we recognize Canelo as being a pound for pound fighter? Is really what I'm trying to get at. The reason why I think we consider men like Naoya Inoue, Terence Crawford, Saul Santos Alvarez Barragan, pound for pound fighters and probably shoe in Hall of Famers is because we know the reality of the sport. Weight absolutely matters, but if you're able to defy those odds set against you because of weight, that's what makes you great. If you cannot factor in the weight as a crucial component of the possible outcome of a fight, then there really shouldn't be any kind of credit that we should give any of these fighters that go up in weight to beat the best fighters out there. We shouldn't, right? A pound for pound fighter is only that because he beats the odds set because of weight factors. Now, this brings up some very interesting questions. Is Devin Haney a pound for pound fighter? Well, he did clear out a division, went up to another one, and he ended up beating a champion, but he ended up losing there. So he's a very limited pound for pound fighter. We ask yourself, can you see Devin Haney being successful at 147 with men like Boots Ennis, Cody Crawley, I don't know, maybe even somebody like Giovanni Santillan. Where do we see that guy? Where do we see Devin Haney against somebody like Mario Barrios or Jordani Ugas? Can we see him beating those? I'm not too sure, right? But he tried, and we got to give him some props for that. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is, did Devin Haney lose because he manipulated weight conditions and Regis Prograis, and they played the same game on him, and he's getting just desserts? What do you think about that in Mexican G? Is there such thing as karma, especially in action of violence like the sport of boxing? How can there be a concept like karma when there is no good in boxing, when it's the most corruptible sport there is, when men and women are trying to kill each other slowly in the ring? I don't know if there is karma. But if there was karma, why would somebody move like that if there was such thing as karma, right? Yeah. The Mexican G says, I think his, meaning Haney's, punch resistance is compromised now. I think Haney lost because he underestimated Ryan. Yeah, definitely. And I think he also underestimated the the abilities that a better rested, more comfortable fighter has over one that doesn't have, that has to go through more stress uh, and the rigors of making weight, like he himself was. I tell you one thing, the Mexican G, it is absolutely hard to make weight, especially at the professional ranked levels. Absolutely hard. It's less stressful to subject yourself like that. It's so hard to find the perfect balance of nutrition, alimentation, and and dehydration, and weight, and just bulking up through muscle. It's so hard to be athletic and exercise and do all of those things and maintain yourself physically capable, right? It really is hard. Ryan Garcia knew what he was doing, taking it easier on his body without having to be parched and dehydrated, because the dehydration affects the brain, right? Um, eh, you don't have to go through those stress. You sleep better. Your stomach's not rumbling, right? You're not miserable, because that's one other thing that it does make you a very miserable, anxious individual when you're starving. That's why men and women do the most despicable things when they're hungry and starving and at point of dying. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago in nearby Fresno, California, some person got ran over by a train, and they were broken into various body parts spread everywhere. And this homeless guy, he goes and picks up a leg, starts walking down the street eating it. This is what hunger does, right? So, but then again, you have to ask yourself, if there was no such thing as karma, then why did Margarito get utterly destroyed at the hands of my then favorite fighter, Miguel Cotto, after he got a rematch when he didn't have any loaded gloves? Why did Josue Vargas, after disrespecting the Mexican flag and talking so bad about Jose Sean Cepeda, why did he, being a former Olympian and standout fighter from Puerto Rico, why did he get utterly destroyed and embarrassed by Sean Cepeda in the first round? You see, why did Eric, why did Barrera humiliate Prince Nassim after he comes in over there flying in a flying carpet and doing all these flamboyant, bombastic things, right? Why do those things happen? Is what I'm trying to ask. Is there such thing as karma in the sport of violence, like boxing? That's really the question. Because if there is, ladies and gentlemen, I propose that our fighters behave better, lest the unthinkable happens, lest they have to pay the piper. And if that's the case, when is Ryan and his karmic time up? I don't know. Ryan won with mental warfare. But you know, I'm sure that you've heard Mexican G. He said that it was all a ploy, that it was all a fabrication of his imagination, a machination on how to deceive through the art of war. Make people think you are weak. Make people think you are frail. Make people think you are mentally unstable, when in fact you've orchestrated every single maneuver, every single thing that's been presented about you. You've handled that. You've been overseeing everything. Everything the world got you see and hear. Apparently, Ryan orchestrated that. He is, if true, a mad genius, right? So I ask another question, because this is sort of related with the whole matter of karma in war, like in love. Is it true that all is fair? Did Ryan Garcia have to do all that in order to win? And if so, is this the way forward? Are fighters supposed to fake the funk, do the crazy shenanigan things, make themselves look weak in order to become triumphant? Do they have to falsify who they are just for the sake of becoming winners? And what does that say for the people that hold their noses upright and keep their noses clean and do the right things and don't act like clowns and don't say that they've been victimized by sexual abuse as children? What does it say about the fighter that's unwilling to lie, to deceive, like Ryan Garcia? Does it mean that they aren't strategists, that they aren't willing to do everything to win? And do you want to see a lot of people just lie to you from now on going forward, in the sake of for them winning? I don't know. I know some of the greatest champions have done that. Ricardo Mayorga, not too sure if he was a champion, I believe he was, but he was a despicable individual. And he achieved the claim and fame. Mike Tyson, we know those very horrific homophobic things that he was telling his opponent in an interviewer when they asked him about that. Remember that very offensive video where he says that he would bend over a man, do some horrific sexual activity to his behind, and he would call him a girlfriend. Some of the most winningest, dominant fighters have been some of the most despicable ones. I'm not here to judge. This is boxing, right? Why do we get in the sport of boxing? Why did my son, who we just came back about an hour ago from playing baseball, why is he doing it? Is he doing it to lose? Are the NBA playoffs going on because the loser is the one that advances to the next level? No, we're here to win. So I ask you, in war as in love, It's all fair. And is there such thing as karma in an activity of violence? Arimeri, 4 kings, 1 tank, 2 Teofimo, 3 Ryan, 4 vacant. Yeah, 4 kings. Well, I mean, there's really 1 king now, right? Everybody seems to have moved on. Tank Davis is at lightweight. Teofimo, Haney are at 140. Ryan is really a welterweight. He's been a welterweight for about 3 fights now. The Mexican G says, "Good God, that's horrific." Yeah, it was absolutely disgusting, and people were filming it, and they didn't really understand what it was that the guy was walking off with. But yeah, it was a human leg, and he was chewing it. There's a lot of strong drugs out there, guys. Strong drugs, and I plead you, as a former drug user, yeah, I don't have any problems with self-deprecation. In order to teach a lesson, do not be like me. I've experimented a lot. This is the reason why I approach this show with questions. I want to understand and experience things, as this is life. That's why it's called life with warp speed. But I've tried drugs, ladies and gentlemen. I used to huff gasoline listening to punk rock and drum and bass in the dark as a teenager. Imagine what it did to my brain. Imagine what kind of harm it did to my body, right? Don't do drugs. And I'm sure that that person who was eating that leg walking down the street was doing drugs. El Pachuco states, when Stevenson missed weight against the Japanese fighter, Bradley stated that it was a smart move. Yeah, well, you know what else he did, El Pachuco? He also blew the weight against Robson Conceição. He lost the belt at 130 because of that move, and immediately went up to 135. And somehow nobody bats an eye, right? Yeah. He took crap from us. I'll tell you what, Pachuco, at the Homie Ricky podcast, we definitely let him have it. We have so little respect for somebody that moves like Shakur Stevens. In the personal, we know that he's a woman beater, right? As a professional, he's been a weight bully, and he's been proud of it. And he's also a very boring fighter. So he's all bad, all bad. The Mexican G says Ryan should force Tank to come up to 145 if there is ever a rematch. He's got to use every advantage and strategy. Yeah, yeah. I don't think Tank would ever do that. The Mexican, to tell you the truth, I don't care about those guys. Tank has never impressed me at 135. What I keep hearing is that he's the goods, he's the best. Everybody that's ever sparred with him will attest to that. But yet somehow he just won't put it on the line. Somehow he won't do it in the pro ranks, and he's content with a baby belt. I know he's very skillful, but you know, it's like Ryan Garcia taking shortcuts and developing a fan base because he continues to win. And I guess maybe we just like to attach ourselves to winners. The Mexican Jesus, I can't stand Tim Bradley. Well, I have to ask you guys, do you guys believe half of the things that someone like Chris Mannix and Tim Bradley say? I mean, everything they seem to say sounds very divisive, very illogical, right? Very biased. Sometimes I think it's an act, right? Sometimes I think it's an act. Their job is to be controversial, stimulate the talk. It's really, to me, sometimes I've seen it like scapegoats, the guys who have to say the incredible, innate, and stupid things in order for the boxing fans, even the casuals, to think they know better than him, right? I think that's the power of someone like Chris Mannix and a Tim Bradley, is that they come out with the most outrageous and outlandish takes that even the casual boxing fan says they are so wrong, and that's the power that they exude to others. They make the casual boxing fans invested because they think they know the sport of boxing. You see, the boxing fan that's a casual thinks they know more than an expert, and that's how they trap them, right? And I'm okay with that because if those casuals are one day going to become ardent fans of the sport, I'm okay because the sport needs every single eye that it could get. And that's why I appreciate somebody like Turkey Ali Sheik, His Excellency. Arimeri says Tim Bradley Peanut Head should retire from commentating, like he said. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So he said that if Ryan Garcia won, he would retire from commentating. Yeah. But guess what, Arimeri? He's a lot like Ryan Garcia, right? They say something, word is bond. They violate that bond, and Tim Bradley still is commentating. The Mexican G states Tim Bradley is backpedaling on his word like a coward. Bing, 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 bing. We have a winner. El Pachuco says, "Oh, I was mistaken. Stevenson missed weight against Robson. Robson is a wonderful person, man. I love that guy. He's been on a couple of, short end of the sticks. Um, he, there is those fighters in Pachuco, a lot like Mauricio Herrera, who are very skillful. Um, a lot of the times they win their fights or are very close. They may be draws, but they get shorted because guess what? They don't have the fan base. I mean, how many Brasileiros do you know here in the United States that would show up to watch Robson fight? Not many. How many Mexican American Chicanos like myself would cheer on a Brasileiro? How many Chilean Yugoslavic individuals like Arimeri would go and support an occasional loser like Robson Conceição over the quote unquote winner and Shakur Stevens? Not that many. It takes a very dedicated boxing fan that respects the way that these people maneuver themselves in the sport of boxing with courage and bravery to really stick by those little guys. But for the most part, the Robson Conceiçãos of the world will always get shafted. Tim Bradley's from Palm Springs. He's probably a closeted homosexual. So I'm not. I'm not. uh, I don't know what that means. But speaking of Palm Springs, right? Um, in Salinas, California, we have this place called the Salinas Rodeo Grounds, and it's home to the biggest. It's the biggest rodeo event in the whole this side of the Mississippi, right? It's 4 or 5 days of really starts on Wednesday all the way through Sunday. 5 days of you know bull riding, uh, bucking and catching and rapping and just all kinds of stuff, right? And the reason I'm bringing that up here, where are you going with this? So when I was a kid, I must have been about 18 or so. I got caught. I got arrested for drinking in public, and I had to do community service. And I was doing the community service right there in the rodeo grounds. It's a massive plot of land there, and I was walking by the horse stables, and there was a young lady who was walking around her beautiful horse, right? Now, this young lady, she was stunning, absolutely beautiful. It turns out that she was a Miss whatever candidate. She said she was from Palm Springs. That's the first time I ever heard about Palm Springs. She mentioned that it was down south, many hours away from where we are up north in Salinas, and that she was one of those Miss California. I was 18, she was 18. I got her number, I gave her mine. I'm talking about a stunningly beautiful woman. She was white, right? Now, I'm not trying to say that the reason why she was stunning. But I really never went out with the white girls like that, right? But she was stunning, just straight stunning. Like, and the fact that she was so friendly and talkative, and she was talking about her horse, and she was telling me about this place called Palm Springs or Dowsing Springs. So maybe, I don't know, Palm Springs. I'm pretty sure it's Palm Springs. Uh, she was just going on, and it was the kind of blue sky colored eyes that you fall into. You just look at him and you just start falling into this big hole of just blue, like disappear yourself there, right? You could look at those sparkling eyes the whole day. Anyways, I got her number and everything, and I ended up losing my wallet. And I remember that my uncle, he was working at the rodeo grounds, right? Because there used to be this like place called Labor Ready, and you could go and work, and he was having to lay down the grass and all kinds of weird stuff, just setting up the whole place. And he told me, he's like, "Oh, well, you were talking to Güerita, right?" So yeah, he's like, "Very good looking." Yeah, yes, I agree, uncle. Absolutely. Está bien chula, he said, right? She's absolutely beautiful. That's what chula means for those that don't speak Spanish. And I lost her number. Now, it's okay, because I ended up finding an even more stunning lady that I fell in love with. Eyes like honey. Just looked in her eyes and just go there and just fly, never come out. And I married her, but maybe it's karma, right? I wonder why I found somebody as special as my wife. A great cook, absolutely great cook. Man, I wish that I could. If you have ever had a good woman that cooks, there's nothing like it. Now, a good woman that cooks and is beautiful, beautiful and stunning to the eye, even better. A hard-working one at that, and a great mother. Man, you're just spoiled. And she loves old low rider cars like myself. Man, the dream come true. You know, it's like Popocatépetl and his Ruca, his Jaina. Those that don't speak Spanish, that means chick or dame. But long story short, ladies and gentlemen, let's just wrap that part up. Is Regis Prograis correct when he says that the reason he lost is because he was manipulated on the weight conditions? And that's what happened to Ryan Garcia. He allowed himself to be weight manipulated on the weight conditions. The one thing that I think that Regis is not mentioning is that I bet Regis bet on himself and said, you know what? This guy has no power. I'm a naturally bigger guy. I've been fighting at this weight for years now. I've only lost to a former undisputed champion in Josh Taylor. I could take this guy on. And he allowed himself to be weight manipulated and he lost. It didn't pan out for him. So I say that the same thing happened to Devin Haney. He bet on himself. He thought he was so much better than Ryan Garcia. And he was willing to not only get paid 1.5 million at that, but he figured, okay, it ain't gonna matter. And then he ended up losing. Is that karma? Who knows? Now, I wanted to ask you guys, do you guys love showboating in the sport? Do you guys ever watch like a Maromero Paez fight? Hector Macho Camacho, Prince Nassim fight? What do you think about those fighters? Those very flamboyant and brash fighters that used to dance in the ring, embarrass their opponent, dance circles, and then sometimes Peter Patter punches just to make the people become entertained. Did you ever enjoy those? Like I remember I did. Maromero Paez is a legend in my eyes. He came in one day, if I'm not mistaken, dressed in a bridal dress in white, like he was getting married. And he used to have little little patch of hair right up in the front that it was just curly. Very much so like Hector Macho Camacho. They used to have a little curly thing just hanging like a jerry curl. And they were always entertaining. Now, there is some disrespect that takes place when you have fighters that are so dominant that they start to dance in the ring, making fun of their opponents, right? It's embarrassing, it's humiliating. All you have to do is just place yourself in the shoes of the opponent that's losing and say, what would happen if that guy was just dancing circles around me, beating me and dancing, and everybody laughing, right? So I ask now, is showboating good or bad for the sport? And the reason I'm asking you this, right, is because a couple of weeks ago, I'm sure that you've heard of Ben Whittaker. Ben Whittaker is a light heavyweight, fighting at 175. He's a fighter that's up and coming. He only has a record of 7-0 and I think 5 KOs. And he hasn't really beaten anybody. I mean, how many fighters do uh, can he beat with name recognition with only 7 fights, right? But he is very tall and lanky, good looking. He knows how to use his physical advantages. He obviously has a lot of fun in the ring because he starts dancing and doing all kinds of crazy hooting and hollering. And apparently, it seems that Callum Smith, one of the Smith brothers, has gone out and stated that he's not really too much in approval of how how Ben Whittaker is moving. He thinks that he should just focus on fighting first, right? Now, he's not necessarily saying anything bad. I think what he's hinting at is that perhaps Ben Whittaker, there really isn't too much for him to be showboating about because he's mostly fighting, you know, men who are 1 foot out the door or journeymen, men that he's obviously much better than. So he's just saying that Ben Whittaker may be showboating when he has no right to, right? When he should just get these guys out there and stick to basics, is what he says. He admits that he found Whittaker's antics disrespectful, is what he says. Now, Callum Smith, we know Callum Smith. Callum Smith is the guy who lost to Canelo, Saul Canelo Salvarez Barragan. He ended up knocking down this can't remember what his name was, but this guy had never been knocked out. And then he ended up knocking down this guy from France. I just remember his name was Paderlique. His last name was Paderlique. Paderlique was really giving it to Callum Smith. Complicated fight. And then Callum Smith took him to the ropes and he just started to tee off and he just let that guy. But Callum Smith, like his brother, Callum Smith was Callum Smith's brother, the guy with the white hair. Oh goodness, both of them ended up fighting Canelo, basically. Liam Smith, they're very serious fighters. They just do their job. They show up, give a good scrappy affair. They're very tough as nails, but they're not perfect. And he stated that Ben Whittaker's antics aren't my cup of tea, is what Callum says. He's trying to be like Nassim Hamed, but Nas was doing it at the Madison Square Garden in world title fights, not against Germany, man. Right? So Callum Smith is basically saying that Ben Whittaker is faking the funk. He's saying, look, guy, you ain't put in the work. These are no hopers. You should not be getting carried away right now. You're nothing. You ain't done nothing in the sport. You don't deserve to be showboating. Now, I will confess that Ben Whittaker, I made a short video about Ben Whittaker. The Ben Whittaker short that I made, Dream ended up posting it on TikTok. It went viral, or as viral as a fighter that has little recognition can get. It got like 56,000 views. On my own channel, I think it got me like about 15,000 or so in about 3 or 4 days. Went pretty viral. Some of my most rewarding videos that gained me a lot of views and a couple of subscribers. Right. So people are definitely interested in the showboating. People love to see a fighter that's out there having fun, a person that's dancing and making faces and still dominating his opponents. Right now, I ask you, at the cost of what he's doing it, is he sacrificing just putting on a good scrappy fight and keeping it basic at the while showboating, or should he really just focus on that? Is the way that Ben Whittaker approaching the sport by basically dancing around no hopers and journeymen and showboating, even though it's bringing him a lot of eyes, is that something that you want to see from a fighter at this juncture? A record of 7-0, hasn't fought anybody. Is Callum Smith correct in saying that Ben Whittaker should stick to basics and take out these guys? Because the last guy that he fought, his name was like Leon Williams or something like that. Leon Williams, he didn't take him out. He knocked him down in the first round, and then Leon ended up giving him the whole 8 rounds. Tough rounds. He actually won some rounds from that guy right there. And that guy was definitely a journeyman, a guy that I'd never heard of, and he had like a decent record, but nothing stellar. So Callum Smith, I think he may be onto something. But the reason why I ask these things, right, is because when I think about these matters, I think about how I apply them to the amateurs, right? Because I do have a son that fights in the amateurs. I have to think about all of these things in order to best maneuver my son in his professional outing, right? Because I'm sure that he will go professional. But I ask, what do you guys think? It's obviously something that people want to see. It's obviously something that's bringing eyes to Ben Whittaker's career. But is he doing it wrong? And I ask you this: do you like to see showboating fighters get knocked the hell out? Right? Because that's one thing, right? When we think about the sport of boxing, we try to associate and follow the fighters that resemble us more closely, right? That's why brown fight fans will follow brown fighters. Black fight fans will follow black fight fans, right? I understand that. I ain't judging it. But like in the case of Vasily Lomachenko, I like Vasily Lomachenko because he doesn't necessarily talk too much. He keeps it respectful. He fights the toughest fighters, right? And I like to think that I'm a little like him, that I don't think of myself as too highly over anybody else, that I am brave. Maybe I'm not. But what I'm saying is I like to associate myself with people like that. That's why a lot of people, in my opinion, didn't seem to really like Mayweather, because Mayweather was arrogant and flashy. And most of the boxing world is traditional and manly. And manly, for the most part, means quiet. They just do the work and keep it mum. Mayweather was the opposite. So I think a lot of these fighters, they grow in the sport because people want to see them hurt, because they don't best resemble the way that we move in the real world, right? I don't think any one of us goes around in the real world, starts doing little dances whenever something good goes for us, especially at the most trivial of things. Okay, you boiled or you steamed some broccoli and it came out perfect. Are you gonna do a little victory dance? No, it's gonna be like, all right, good, let's do it next time, maybe even better, right? So it's Callum Smith onto something. What would you do If you were the father of a fighter or the manager of a fighter and you wanted to best maneuver your fighter, would you tell him continue showboating? Or would you say, bro, just keep it simple? Showboating will come when you've reaped the rewards of keeping it simple and climbing the ranks. I don't know. I ask you. Comment below. But here's the last thing that I did want to run by you guys. This one, this one really puts the United States of America and the boxing world to shame. Embarrassing. Now, I was watching, I was listening into a couple of the morning boxing shows. I think it was Boxing Boys, and I've caught a couple of others like on Showbiz Theater and whatnot. And there was a lot of people capping in the favor of Ryan, obviously. How it was genius that he had deceived everybody, manipulated the weight, came in heavier, didn't abide by his word. Word is no longer bond. Basically, people were cheering on Ryan Garcia and feeling ecstatic because he had beaten Devin Haney because of the art of war, right? He came in heavier. He promised he was going to make 140. He didn't. People cheered that act on. They realized that that weight manipulation favored him. And because it favored him, he was more successful in this very hard fought fight against Devin Haney, but they were cheering him on. Even though most people don't admit that you have cheered on Ryan Garcia, you cheering on a weight bully and a liar and a deceiver, a person that acts like he's a Christian, but yet he's more like the Antichrist. A person that says he's for the children, but he caps about being victimized by sexual assault. Right? That's what we're cheering on when you say yes to Ryan Garcia, right? But the whole world is basically clamoring in support and of approval of what Ryan Garcia did, as despicable as that was. But now let me compare that to what's happening elsewhere in the world. Let's just compare that to the way that Japan sees men and women that don't make weight. Wow, it's night and day. It's black and white. We are doing it wrong, ladies and gentlemen. As reported in fightnews.com, April the 18th, 2024, the year of our Lord, and written by Joe Koizumi. He states, and the report written, overweight WBC number 8 Tsutsumi finishes ex-champ Moreno. How did he do that? Because he didn't make weight. Now let me just read this report to you and focus on the descriptive terms that Mr. Joe Koizumi is using to describe the situation. In Japan, a failure to make weight is a crime to be severely criticized and punished logically and morally. That's how he starts it off. Listen again. In Japan, a failure to make weight is a crime to be severely criticized and punished logically and morally. Therefore, our boxers endeavor to make weight to have this sport fair and square. So, Luis Neri had been suspended indefinitely by the JBC, though lately revoked, to materialize his WBC mandatory shot at Monster Naoya anyway, as ordered by the WBC. Under our strict circumstances, undefeated, highly expected prospect WBC number 8, WBA number 10, and featherweight Hayato Tsutsumi shamefully failed to make weight by no less than 3.5 pounds against ex-WBA bantam ruler Anselmo Moreno in a 126-pound contracted bout in Tokyo, Japan. Do you hear what a Japanese writer said about another Japanese writer, a fighter, I mean, a fellow Japanese. He said it was shameful to be severely criticized morally and ethically because the fighter did not make weight. He goes on and says, Tsutsumi displayed a superior physical power and finished currently WBA number 9 Panamanian Moreno with a record of 43-7-1, 15 KOs. Right? Even though Tsutsumi only has 5-0 and 2 KOs. Listen, obviously Tsutsumi with just 5 fights as a professional, he is good enough to be a former champion with a record of 51 fights in total. 43 of those wins, only 7 losses, 1 draw. And he was superior physically and technically. He dropped the 38-year-old soldier twice. Listen to what he said. The audience jeered his overweight scandal rather than praised his victory after he dropped the 38-year-old quote-unquote soldier twice and for the full count. Okay. You see what's going on? When the Japanese overweight fighter stopped his opponent, the Japanese boxing fans, they booed him and they jeered him. And the writer describes the loser as a soldier. Okay. Now let's see what the fighter has to say about it. By the way, this is how good Tsutsumi was. Hayato Tsutsumi. His amateur record was 88-6 with 26 stoppages. He won 13 amateur national championships, including the one for adults, where he beat adults when he was still a high school student. But this is what Hayato Tsutsumi says. Just after the victory, Hayato wholeheartedly apologized to Moreno. Wholeheartedly apologized to Moreno, as well as the audience, saying, I've tarnished the name of boxing, and I truly feel sorry to Moreno. I'll seriously reflect on my mistakes. Ladies and gentlemen, the Western world can benefit by the way the Japanese perceives the world, perceives matters such as honor, bond, promise, compromise, manliness, expectation and demand of excellence. In the United States of America, us, a brown man, weight bullied and cheated his way to a victory, lied and deceived, laughed in our faces. We made him a millionaire, multi-millionaire, and we cheer him on. Because I guess in love and war, all is fair, right? I don't know. The Japanese sees things differently. The Japanese are critical of their fighters for as simple a thing as weight manipulation. They boo and they jeer, not cheer, jeer the winner when he has done so through the nefarious and dishonorable ways. Here in the States, we praise the cheater. Why? I don't know. Do we see ourselves in the cheater? Are we cheaters? Is our culture more like by all means necessary? And is the culture of the Japanese more like Emiliano Zapata said, I'd rather die on my feet than to live on my knees? An honorable thing to fight, never give up. Well, I don't know. Just a couple of months ago, maybe a year now, we were saying Ryan Garcia was a quitter. Now he's the hottest thing in the world. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. I think the Japanese have a higher expectation of what excellence is. And it conflicts, and it's night and day with the way that we see things as excellent. In this case, I think the Japanese are doing the right thing by criticizing their own champion for being dishonorable and taking such advantages instead of fighting fair and square like the writer stated. Somehow right here in the Western world, we don't even consider those things. And this is boxing, a traditional sport. I don't know if it's traditional anymore. I just made the last live talking about how Ryan Garcia represents the modern man, modernity, the end of tradition. I don't think boxing is no longer a traditional sport. I think that anchors us back to a time and a day when men were brave and honorable, or tried to be. But even when they weren't too proud of it, for being cheats and deceivers, right? Or maybe this sport has always been about cheats and deceivers, and we were just ignorant. Who knows? Maybe that ignorance is the reason why the sport goes on. Nonetheless, I do think that Japanese fighting fan and the fighters themselves are doing things right. Recall, just a few months ago, the very first live that I made was about a Japanese fighter that did not make weight on the scale. He felt so embarrassed he took his life. This fighter chose to fight under those conditions. Okay, I'm not gonna fault him for being alive, but he seems to be shamed and embarrassed by it all. Another one couldn't live that way, having stated that he would meet an obligation and have been forfeited on that obligation, and he took his life. I won't fault that guy, but I'm not gonna, with any type of facility, condone and celebrate the shenanigans that make a lazy, disrespectful, unchristian individual like Ryan Garcia the face of boxing. I don't care if he is like me. I don't care if he looks like my son. That's not where I'm headed with this. But then again, I'm just here asking questions. You tell me what you would do. That's what I'm willing to talk about. All means necessary, or to die on your feet than to live on your knees. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. Again, this is Life with Warp Speed. a show where I have more questions than answers. I hope you've had some things to think about today. I sure have. I think in this case, I don't have to think too much about the matter of who's doing it right as a boxing fan, the Japanese or the Western world. In this case, I completely side with the Japanese. It should be a shameful thing for a fighter to not abide by weight. Ryan Garcia is no better than Shakur Stevens. Weight bullies, scoundrels, liars, deceivers, violators of all things that are right. But then again, how can I fault them when they are the rich, handsome fighters? They are the modern man. It's been fun. I bid you adieu. I hope you are well of health and sane of mind. And if you aren't, well, you know what I say, right? Welcome to the club. Engage.